Hi everyone, and welcome back to In Depth. How to not care about what people think? How do you ignore criticism? These are definitely questions that pop up frequently in my inbox. So to those of you who asked, you're in luck because today we go in depth on this answer. I'm sure many people actually share this question, and the proof lies in the fact that on social media it is very easy to find popular posts such as how not to care about what people think, or a guide on how to ignore criticism, or simply motivational quotes such as, your self-worth does not depend on others, and the like. As it often happens on social media, all these posts tend to provide very superficial answers and a complete lack of analysis of the subject matter. And this series, by definition, is antagonistic to superficiality. We go in depth, as we should always do. So, the first question that arises naturally is, why do we care about what other people think in the first place? Surely one should know that before knowing how not to care. Secondly, it seems that the underlying assumption here is that not caring should be universally recognized as a good thing. There is so much forced assertiveness and conviction nowadays that your personal belief must be true. Dogmatism cloaks itself very well, whatever the historical era and whatever the medium of communication. So before I formulate a thesis of any kind on this subject matter, let's answer the first question. Why do we care about what other people think? As for most explanations of our human behavior, we need to turn the clock back a few thousand years and look at our evolution history. Let's not forget that what we consider history is only the last few moments of our evolution. For most of human existence, we existed as primitive people, hunter-gatherers with primitive social structures, such as tribes. The rationale of organizing into a tribe was to have better odds against the dangers of wilderness, against the elements and the ferocious beasts. Even then, we relied on the primitive specialization and division of tasks. Being accepted in a tribe meant survival. Being cast away often meant literal death. The need for acceptance from others, apparent for most of history, still persists today because it is ingrained in our DNA. In modern society, we are more than ever dependent on our complex societal organization. Of course, being cast away from your social circle today does not mean guaranteed death. It doesn't even mean loss of your basic needs. And perhaps for this reason, we can have the impression of self-sufficiency in a way. One can live by themselves and have access to all the benefits the society has to offer. Obviously, this self-sufficiency is an illusion. One could go as far as arguing that the primitive man or woman was more self-sufficient in a way. Throw any of us into the wild today and we wouldn't stand a chance. So, there must be something intrinsically positive in caring about what people think of us, and something essential in our inbuilt need for acceptance. After all, we need this instinct to function correctly in a society, and a lack of this is considered clinical. Abraham Maslow, one of the most notable psychologists of the 20th century, in 1943 proposed this famous hierarchy of needs, providing a pyramid arrangement for human needs, which must be satisfied in priority, a priority order, from basic needs at the base, such as nutrition, shelter, safety, through higher up psychological needs, such as friendship, love, esteem from others, and culminating at the top of the pyramid in self-actualization, which means achieving one's full potential and self-worth. While his theory has no scientific basis, it became very popular because everyone can easily identify with it. The notable thing about this pyramid is the need for esteem being considered more fundamental and preceding self-actualization. While the self-worth is the ultimate goal, it cannot, according to Maslow, be achieved without having satisfied the other more fundamental needs first. So I need to have shelter and then I need to have esteem before I can have self-actualization. I personally do not consider humans to work so compartmentally. While I recognize all the needs in the list or in the pyramid, I believe that to an extent they could be developed in parallel and gradually. But this is part of a different discussion, which we're not going to cover today. The importance of this hierarchy lies in how well accepted it is still to this day, which is a lot. It says a lot about how we perceive our needs. To go back even further than Maslow, I would like to mention Baruch Spinoza, Dutch philosopher of the 17th century and one of the early most influential figures of the Enlightenment. Spinoza was also a major proponent of rationalism, like Descartes was. One day, while I was reading his magnum opus, The Ethics, which if you haven't read, I recommend reading, I came across this quote. He said, "Love of esteem is not contrary to reason, but can arise from it." Well, this is not one of his most famous quotes. It stuck with me. And this is because of how relevant this remained even after 350 years. And the reference that I picked up was in a paper published in 2011 by Kahn et al. Precisely this theory emerges from this study, and it explains a lot of the public irrationality that we see nowadays, whereby masses of people support an irrational idea without questioning, just because it is mainstream in their circle, or on social media, or in the news. These people are not irrational, they're not illiterate, or they're not stupid. Under an individual viewpoint, wanting to conform to your group or those around you can be seen as a rational choice, even if the consensus is not in support of a rational argument or does not benefit society at large. This is known as the tragedy of the belief commons. Take climate change as an example. Being a denier of climate change is not a sign of scientific illiteracy, but more of a sign of allegiance to a political side. So we're very familiar with this. And similarly, believing that Western society is currently going through unprecedented social inequality, even when equality, pluralism, and liberalism are at an historic high, is also a sign of political allegiance, more than a sign of individual irrationality. As an individual, there are great rewards in agreeing with your tribe. Disagreeing is often difficult or almost impossible because it's received with hostility by the consensus closest to you, while holding a different view on your own, even if you believe it valid, seems to hardly have a widespread impact on society. So, far from being irrational, the individual deploys rationalizing in support of their pre-existing belief. And Kahn has actually shown that the more educated the individual, the stronger the rationalizing, and paradoxically, the stronger the polarization. This, of course, is what results in public irrationality. Obviously, so-called public irrationality. True intellectual independence can be achieved only through the guidance of reason, without an a priori belief. This means that what other people think or criticism should not be dismissed, but incorporated into constructive debate. When you inform yourself, try to find arguments against your view. Try to falsify your beliefs. If they stand up to that, then you have achieved a reasonable view, from which we can all benefit. But hold on a minute, you might say. We started by saying that the need for acceptance is innate and not necessarily negative. Then went on to show that this need for acceptance causes public irrationality. And now we're saying that criticism must be accepted positively. So which one is it? Well, before I answer this, let me take things a step further and show you why caring about what other people think of us can be, in modern times, very negative for the individual. And not only for the individual, also for society at large. I think that by now you should know, or you should be used at least, to me making the opposite argument to what I started with in order to get closer to a more complete and accurate view of the world. So I'll say one thing and then I'll say the opposite and then I'll balance it out. So We have seen how the need for acceptance is innate in us. This can literally translate into a fear of being excluded. This is why some people feel uncomfortable eating alone at a restaurant, or why they bury their head into their phones while they're waiting for the bus, for example. Self-esteem, even if it contains the word self, is strongly linked to external elements, like getting a good job, a nice house, etc. And also the need for tribalism or being on the correct side of politics or religion. The problem is that nowadays there are innumerable ways of manifesting this need for acceptance, definitely more than necessary. Businesses tap on this instinct or this fear to sell us the latest gadgets, cars, watches. And more than ever, we are facing this problem on a whole new scale with social media. Social media platforms are literally built on this dopamine generating mechanism of receiving attention, and we push it to great lengths in order to create an image of ourselves which we believe will receive the most approval. We all do this, even when we speak up for causes that seem so unrelated. When everyone jumps on the latest bandwagon of praying for a cause, advocating for the other, etc., it is usually in order to partake to the tribal ritual of virtue signaling, especially because no one goes in depth enough on the subject being discussed. And even when you do, you're not exempt. I do not consider myself exempt either. Instagram and Facebook and Snapchat and TikTok are perfect for fueling the need for codependence. And this can become toxic. The moment you stop being fully present as your authentic self, and all your thoughts and behaviors become a manifestation of what you want to project for others to see, you are not expressing your self-worth. And in the worst case scenario, one can reach a point where they do not even know what they think, who they are, what is their opinion, because they're only preoccupied with pleasing others. And for this reason, one should reach an inner balance and a feeling of self-worth that emanates from within. The key word here is, as in most things, balance. Even the most confident of people keep into consideration what other people think. They just don't let it dominate the self-perception. We all want to be successful and we all want to be positively recognized, but we also want to be true to ourselves. When people say that you shouldn't care about what other people think, that doesn't mean becoming numb or refractory to criticism. It means that you let external influences affect you in the right way rather than getting buried under them. And ultimately, let's not forget, we want to let go of this social anxiety in order to become a better version of ourselves and become more successful, whatever success means to you. And the reason we want to be successful, paradoxically, is to be accepted and recognized. Our self-esteem as a social species is dependent on the esteem of others. We cannot suddenly stop caring about what others think of us and carry on believing in this illusory self-sufficiency. And this is the duality of human nature that I always talk about. We are great and wretched, like Blaise Pascal once said. So what is my answer? Do not stop caring about what other people think. Your friendships, your job, your place in society depend on this. But learn instead why you care. And with this knowledge, try to control the extent to which this affects you. Know that your self-worth does not derive from others, but also that it is still strongly linked to that. Just as much as you depend on others in order to find food in the shops and trains and planes and a roof over your head. Be the author of your inner happiness and eliminate toxic codependency from your life. The sort of dynamics that make you forget who you truly are. That's the meaning of not caring about what others think. But remember also that not caring about what others think does not equate to self-complacency. Knowing your self-worth does not mean you're perfect as you are. We all can improve and we all can evolve. It is, as always, hard work, constant work, because using reason, as we know, always requires effort. Thank you so much for listening.